All right, here we go.
There it is. Good time to turn my phone off, right?
Yeah, silent usually.
Airplane mode is on. Unscripted.
Yeah. Oh. Let this die out. All right. Wow. Check.
All right, let's
Jimmy.
What's up?
Sorry, that was so much testing.
Yeah, it is what it is.
One of the bigger things too is when I'm by myself and I don't have anyone in here, it's a lot of back and forth.
You're like Spider-Man, man.
I'm just like back and forth. I'm just trying not to sweat through my blazer. Like, keep it pressed, keep it rolling.
My man, you was just like Spider-Man. You from here to here. It's kind of crazy.
All
man.
around. But hey, we have a special guest today. Jimmy. Introduce yourself. You just flew across the country to be on the MLO show with me, Addie Nat. I am like absolutely stoked.
When you're looking to grow, man, you do what you got to do, and that's invested in yourself. And you're part of that reason why my growth is going to be where it needs to be.
I absolutely love it.
Absolutely, brother.
Man, so direct flight last night.
Right.
You arrived what time in Portland, Oregon?
I was in Portland, Oregon about 10:30.
10:30.
10:30. It was actually cool because the flight wasn't that crazy, so the kids were able to enjoy themselves with 2 seats.
Well, yeah, you were telling me too. It's like nice when you can get the whole family together and not all spread out in the plane, right?
Absolutely. It was cool, man. We loved it. It's one of the good flights.
So Jimmy is actually a mortgage originator, just like myself. But tell him your home state, where you're from. Give him a little, and not a boring LinkedIn bio, but enough nuggets for us to know.
Right. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, Empire State. It started me in the financial district, worked for investment management, private banking, had some fun with it. I realized that I can do more with what I had. And I was doing things on the side as far as fixing people's clients, friends, families' credit. And I was like, wow, I can do this and have fun with it. In addition, I had gotten sick. I had blood clots. And I realized when you're by yourself, you're like, what are some of the things you can do to help others grow? And incentive compensation was home ownership. And it got me to where I am here now, vice president at Guarantee Rate.
That's amazing. I'm so such a cool story. And I think maybe tell me a couple of different things, because really I'd love to compare kind of East Coast real estate on the mortgage side and then West Coast. And obviously they're 2 totally different markets, you know what I'm saying? But I'd love, right before we almost had our own podcast in the operations side of this entire studio, because you were talking about the number one thing people do to screw up their mortgage, really. What's the number one thing? And I want to hear more about your perspective on that and then do some comparisons. So we're going to kind of bounce all over the place today, guys, but bear with us. I promise there's going to be plenty of nuggets to take place. And especially a lot of our audience isn't in the West Coast. So bringing in a mortgage person that's got a perspective from the East Coast, and all of our listeners and watchers out there can hear from you. So maybe let me give you a question. What do you think the maybe biggest misperception of buying a home in the East Coast is compared to the West Coast? Is it property taxes? Is it neighborhoods? Is it price point? Talk to me. What kind of conversations are you having right now?
In the state I live in, New Jersey, where I do most of my business, taxes is a big thing. So sometimes potential clients think they can afford certain things. However, they get shocked based on the county they're moving into because of the taxes.
Isn't New Jersey one of the highest property tax states?
It's a challenge.
Give me out here, I use the rule, the 1% rule. So it's very common for an annual assessment of property taxes to be 1% of what you bought that home for.
Correct.
And it does increase gradually with appreciation and reassessments. But do you kind of have a percentage rule that you tell your clients?
Usually, when they're buying price points between $400,000 to $600,000, I go generic and just call it $12,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah, in some counties, that's applicable. In others, it's Oh, and then there are others who don't have as much in taxes, and that's a good thing. But you keep in mind that your proximity to New York City is not far, right? So there are factors behind it.
I mean, that justification really only, you're pretty close to the big city guys. So I was like, could you give me a little, but like 12,000, because that's like a $1.2 million home here.
Oh, no.
You know what I'm saying? Like $12,000 property taxes, it would be a normal assessment for a $1.2 million home in the Portland, Oregon area. So you're talking, oh my gosh, 400 to 600K homes have over $10,000
Absolutely
annual property taxes.
No question.
Well, just some quick math, and you take the 12,000, divide that by 12. We've got $1,000 per month built into your all-inclusive payment, guys. $1,000. Like that's like a souped-up Escalade payment. Every month going to property taxes. So the cost of living needs to be quite the factor out there, right?
Clearly, it is, and that's the sticker shock that some have to deal with. The fact is, like, this is what I'm going to be paying in taxes. And keep in mind, that's okay in the corridor that I'm in.
Right.
If you're in New York, parts of Westchester, Long Island, I mean, it's, if not more, right? And you're getting probably 2,300 square feet of a home in Westchester. And some parts of Jersey, and you're paying $11,000-$12,000 in taxes.
Oh, yeah. Well, man, that's still like the sticker shock. It's hitting me. I'm not even like buying out there. It's your neighborhood.
Yeah.
One of the like little nuggets that I use with my people when we're going through what I call the mortgage strategy is it's an easy, I call it kind of a Netflix takeaway. And what a Netflix takeaway is when you and the wife are like pausing Netflix and you're talking about your payment or what we can get approved for.
Right.
For $50 in extra payment, say it's a credit card minimum payment, say it's $50 more because you upgraded to that nicer car, right? A little extra payment. That impacts your pre-approval buying amount by approximately $10,000. So that's a real easy takeaway for everyone. You double that up to it. You take on $100 a month payment. Say you're just like, oh, $100, that's nothing. I'm going to finance this whatever personal loan, $100 a month. You actually just lowered your pre-approval amount by approximately $20,000. Your buying power, your budget. And it plays the same role, Jimmy, in property taxes, right?
Yeah, it does, because like you can, some parts of the county, Morris County, I'll just use that as an example, right? You'll buy a $600,000 house and the taxes will be $10,000. Meanwhile, you're looking some parts of Essex County where the house is $400,000 and your taxes are $15,000 in taxes. You're like $15,000 on $400,000 price point, $600,000 on a $10,000 price point. You're like, wow. And that is a huge difference in your monthly payments. And
massive.
So when referral partners I work with, the first thing I tell them is, look, when you're taking your clients out, just make sure that you understand the county / town so you can make sure that they're aware of what their shock is going to be with their monthly payment. So it doesn't make it seem like it's Jimmy that came up with these numbers. It's where you're looking at that came up with these numbers. I'm here to support it so we don't get into any financial hiccups. You know what I mean?
Well, and I would also add too, this is one of the reasons why you absolutely need to work with somebody that's going to be up front and run those numbers with a microscope.
Absolutely.
Not just a wide angle fisheye lens. Because, dude, when maybe one property is $200 more a month because of the taxes, you might or might not be approved for that house. You've toured it. You're putting in an offer. You think you're good to go.
Right.
But somebody like Jimmy or myself, we're really going to analyze the property prior to and really ensure, okay, well, you guys are approved up to here, and up front before you get out into the field, hey, I got to connect with Jimmy or Addie prior to putting in an offer because these taxes might be too high for me and I might not be able to afford it, or I might have to bring an extra $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 in down payment. And guys like you and I, we don't want to blindside people with that information. Man.
No, it's crazy. And that's what, like anything else, right? You talk to an automated person and they just understand what they understand based off a table that they saw was given to them in a monthly email
online calculator.
Online, right? And so when you're looking at it, they're like, that person's saying this, and this is what your monthly payment is. I'm like, who told you this? And why do you feel like that's the monthly payment you're going to have? You need to speak to someone like myself and you to make sure that we give you your proper insurance payments, your proper tax payments.
Good
so
point.
we make sure that when you're going into this situation, you feel like, okay, the trust factor is there. Now let's figure out a way to get the offer for the home that potentially will be mine.
Absolutely. Well, to not get on the monthly payment rant for too long, but those are good takeaway, guys, especially if you're a home buyer, home seller looking to refinance and you're watching or listening to the show. Really take into account the taxes and really take into account of if you're just getting a quick one-off from Joe Schmo who doesn't really care and he took 6 minutes to make you do something online and then the only return is here's your water approved, it's probably not that dialed in. So it's extremely important to work with someone that's going to give you the attention to detail and you understand, because also there are a lot of ways, and I'll conclude and won't go to it in a second. There are a lot of ways to manipulate an approval. And when I say manipulate, I'm not saying like anything illegal, but there are ways for you to structure, say, closing costs or estimated property taxes,
right,
and make something look more appealing than it really is. For example, say you call an internet lender, right?
Right.
You call someone out in the land of I don't care, and you're like, hey, welcome to the land of I don't care. I need to get approved. Okay, great. Fill this out. And then they send you you're approved up to 500 and this is your payment, $2,500 a month.
You're like,
well,
really?
That's accounting for historically lowest property taxes that you might find on a property, right?
Right.
And then the insurance that you're not going to be able to get because that won't even cover the house.
No.
Right? And an interest rate that isn't even accurate.
No.
So it's like, oh.
It's a bait and switch, right? So they'll quote you they'll quote you on what you pay quarterly for taxes for your yearly taxes. You're like, whoa. Really? I'm like, $3,000? That's what some of us pay a quarter, if not more, in New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Not Pennsylvania, New Jersey.
Yeah.
So you're like, whoa. But it happens. So you just have to be careful with that.
You got to be careful. I mean, my wife and I, anyone who's watching is like an abnormally dark tan for me because we were just in Mexico.
Living that life,
We went on a vacation, a well-deserved one.
Well-deserved.
It was a 5-year wedding anniversary thing,
Okay,
Jimmy.
congratulations, man.
I appreciate it. But, my wife's an amazing person. She puts up with me. But here's the thing. It really reminds me when you go to do these like vacation tours, right?
Right.
And it's like there's that baseline price. Like, oh, you get to do these tours or whatever, like $49. Oh, that's super doable.
Yeah, it's catchable, right? Yeah, it makes sense.
It's the same concept with mortgage. But here's the story. It's $49. The whole time you think it's $49 and you make this whole plan to take your family out to this excursion and you show up. $49 is like you sitting in the bleachers to watch the Dolphins.
Absolutely.
If you want to move up once and maybe feel the splash,
right,
$75. If you want to put a foot in, $100. If you want to swim with the Dolphins, $250. And that's real time. That's the ad you saw.
No question. Oh yeah. Do you want that big picture too?
You want the picture? $20. But that is what we're trying to eliminate in the mortgage space.
Right.
We don't want you to think it's going to be this huge Cirque du Soleil event, an excursion, and then it's 4 times the cost that you were expecting. No, we want it up front.
Exactly.
We want to know. We want to manage the expectations and make sure that you're as educated as possible going into the buying process.
Yeah, but this is a lifetime commitment, right? And the fact is that
it's not just swimming with the dolphins.
Exactly, right? It's not a one-time thing like we out. This is a lifetime commitment, and family and friends want to know how you were treated throughout the process. And that's our responsibility because I think we are the financial advisors when it comes to their lives because they're going to have their securities, investment managements talking to one person. There's going to be situations where they're going to talk to us when things do happen and they have the equity and they can talk to us and then take that same information, share it with their financial advisor. And now we become the bridge of community of financial literacy, 1, 2, we're protecting your interests. 3, it's what we do because we love it.
Right. Absolutely. I was just writing down a couple of quick notes. Well, love that. I want to get into that equity position line you said in a little bit, but let's put that on the table and go. what is the season of real estate for you guys out in the East Coast and where you're at specifically? Because in the Portland market, summer's hot. Like spring and summer, a lot of people, those are the times it's not raining here in the Pacific Northwest. So people prefer to, move their stuff when it's not pouring down rain. But additionally, school districts play a really big factor. People prefer to move their kids when they're not in school and in that kind of flow of stuff. But our off season is kind of like once Labor Day hits and goes to March, those are kind of the less buyer roundabout times. Is that the same for you guys?
Same for
area?
us, yeah, okay. Same for us, because usually when they're moving, it's predicated off the school system. So wherever your kid is at the time, that's when you're like, okay, do I want my kid to do this? Do I want my kid to do that? So on and so forth. So it's like you.
Well, because we don't get a lot of snow here. Does snow play a factor? How does that work into real estate?
Well, there's a huge population in the tri-state area. So in some cases, depending on how someone is feeling, because if you're living in this Manhattan, let's say you're living in these walls, and sometimes you just want that outside living. So you do quite a business, but it's not like the spring market, spring going into summer. Like it's just burn and turn. Let's go. Like we're closing you on to the next. Let's do this. Let's do that. Helping clients and so on and so forth. So that's the busy market.
Well, out in Pacific Northwest, we have a pretty standard 30-day close expectation. That's kind of par for the course. Are those the same for your area on the East Coast? Or I keep saying give me how do I refer to your area specifically from a local standpoint?
We're from the East, man.
Just flat up, but the East also includes like Florida. We're not talking about Boca Raton.
Nah, we're going to leave it that way. That's the South, man. We in the East. Same thing. It's expected for us to close in 30 days because it's just where we're at with what things were going on. And particularly with the company I work for now, right? Mm-hmm. It's the way it's set up is we have to give that concierge service, meaning that from beginning to end, we're trying to close you as quick as possible because we understand how important it is for you to have this home.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, and I like one of the bigger differences, though, on the West Coast here in Oregon,
right?
Our real estate laws, and you got to know out there, real estate laws are different in every state.
Correct.
Every single state has different ways and laws on the sell side and on the buy side.
Right.
So on the West Coast, Oregon and Washington, a lot of the real estate laws protect the buyer, not the seller. For example, there's a lot of layered contingencies that if anything happens, like say you lose your job up to the last 3 or 4 days prior to closing, you would still have a way to get your earnest money back because of, your employment or your financing contingency. But down in California, it's like everything's about the seller, and the market has actually pushed in that state. It's like demand 5 to 7 days after accepted offer that you release all contingencies.
Whoa.
California is unreal. No joke, like straight up.
Wow.
There's a lot of money at stake, and they're very aggressive, and it never ends well for the buyer if they want to back out, and it's really protected to the seller. So I was curious, is it more of a buyer protected law state in the East, or is it more seller from your point of view?
New Jersey, I'm going to speak to New Jersey, right? So the buyers are protected as well as the sellers. I mean, there could be situations where sometimes that person can get their earnest money back. However, it is my responsibility to make sure that that episode does not happen because of there's too many ripple effects that can happen. So in New Jersey, the sellers and buyers are protected. I would say evenly. I haven't seen situations, at least in my experience, where somebody was not getting their fair share. For most of the lawyers that I work with in New Jersey, it's always been like, okay, we're going to do this to protect the seller. We're going to do this to protect the buyer. And before they move forward, particularly with programs with the FHA, like you make sure there's certain things covered in order to make sure the purchase goes through.
Yeah. Well, I think another really big, and I love this, I compare California because it's the most expensive West Coast up to my area, Oregon and Washington, and then to you. So a lot of people that I help a lot of relocations from California.
Right.
So a lot of those people down there think that, they're living in Southern California, super expensive, right? And in their mindset, they haven't bought because they think they need 20 to 25% down. And that actually plays a lot of weight in that California market is how much down payment it is. But up here in Oregon and Washington, it really doesn't play as much of a role in the seller's consideration. It's like, okay, well, maybe they're a first-time home buyer utilizing the 3% down, right?
Right.
And it's not playing that big of a deal. As long as we can demonstrate the assets and they're paying their closing costs, it's just as competitive. So I was curious, like, for me, probably average down payment for my clientele is going to be between about 7 to 12% down payment.
Right.
So what are you kind of seeing over there? Is that pretty much the same or less or more?
So when we were going through pandemic, there were some who had more down payment that was attractive, right? Rightfully so, because that's how that individual was thinking.
Sure.
But I've seen from FHA going down as 3.5% to 10% down. We were working with a lot of clients that were dealing with that type of price point. And those who had 20%, 25%, it is what it is. We just continue to process because you felt like this is what you wanted to put down. But my conversations were more about, hey, if it's cheap to borrow money, why aren't you putting less down? Let the rate work for you.
Absolutely.
Keep whatever you were about to put down, put that in your savings, put that in a rainy day situation. Hey, talk to one of my referral partners who does financial investments. Ask them, what are some of the nuances I can do conservatively investing or risky investing, depending on what tolerance you're comfortable with. Speak to them and ask them how they can allocate some of your monies to help it grow within the market.
It's huge. And like, that's a good point too with the reserves. I preach that all the time because you don't want to put all your money into the home and then not be able to access it. And the only way you can would be to get an additional home equity line of credit or to refinance. And that has fees. So you just spent $3,000 in fees to get $20,000. Not a really good financing percentage there, right?
And then in some cases, what we're doing with private mortgage insurance, I would make the case, your rate is actually cheaper if you have two people insuring your money than one person. They're like, no, that's not possible. I'm like, yes, it is. And you know what? Because of the house is over ask, why don't you buy down your private mortgage insurance? You still have that rate and you still have the cash that you thought you was going to need to put down. Now you can, again, put that through another vehicle and make that money work for you, right?
Yep.
So,
that's a good point. That's another takeaway not a lot of people know. And it takes a two-step kind of explanation. So number one, if you put less than 20% down, you're usually issued what's called a mortgage insurance premium. So that can be paid up front or added into your monthly payment. Correct. Most people take the monthly payment.
Right.
That factor is all determined on conventional loans for how much down payment and what your credit score is. So note that credit score plays a huge role in that.
Yep.
But not everyone thinks, oh, I want to do the 20% down so I don't carry mortgage insurance. They don't want to be talked out of it or into it. Okay, no, I understand that. But you understand that your rate, and this is what Jimmy was just saying, your rate is actually higher in most situations if you put 20% down or more. And why is that? Because your note, the loan, the mortgage is not insured with the mortgage insurance.
Right, exactly.
So the investor actually gives you a slightly lower interest rate because your note is insured. So if you ever default, that lender or the investor then executes on that mortgage insurance and gets bailed out on your note. So that is another thing, like having 17 to 18% down might be a way better play for most people than 20 to 25.
Absolutely correct.
Save a ton of money. Do what Jimmy's saying where you get a nest egg. Now I've got 6 to 12 months that I could reinvest into a conservative brokerage account.
Correct.
Which a lot of those are making 4 to 9%. I'm no financial advisor.
Right.
Coming in, like they're making money, right?
Right.
And then, depending, I think federally right now, I think mortgage insurance is a tax reduction too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Once again, not a tax certified. I got to say that for compliance reasons, but there's a lot of advantages to having a dynamic mortgage strategy.
Correct.
And talking about diversifying your money and using it wisely so you and your family are protected and not house poor.
Exactly. That's the most important thing. And someone like myself, where we didn't have that much coming up. So when I'm working with a client, I 1,000,000% understand that. And so that's why I'm always protecting that, because I know 2 or 3 payments can set you back.
Right.
And I don't want to be that guy, right? Because you're not my transaction. You're my relationship. Everything means that much more to me as more like anything else, right? You're part of my family. Some people say like, whoa, you're getting too emotional behind them. I'm like, it is emotional because you're helping someone purchase something that they probably never thought about purchasing. Now they're in a position to purchase because of your help. And two, it's a family moving into a home. What better way to create what you felt you worked hard for, which is an asset?
Yeah. I mean, I came from a family that, tried their best to give me as much of an educational opportunity. So they overextended themselves to get into school districts. So I was in a good school. So I was that kid, right? That was going to the nice schools, but I was working at the country club that they were all going to on the weekends. Right. It's like, hey guys,
look at me.
Yeah. Oh, hey, do you need your clubs cleaned? I'll be your caddy. But I think what that brings is the kind of an earn it attitude.
Correct.
And hey, I'm going to hustle and I'm going to grind. And I think what I see in you and just how much passion comes out when you're talking about home ownership is that's the number one step to get ahead in this world, in the United States. Everything starts with owning your home because you're isolating your overhead.
Yeah.
You're isolating your overhead. And if you're playing it smart, you'll have equity to use. That becomes the next one, then another home.
Correct.
And then that money keeps compounding and it's the snowball.
It's almost like your house is your bank, respectively, if you use it correctly. Right? Because that now creates what's called aggregates of some of the things that you can do. Like if you're doing something where you're doing something full time, you decide that, hey, you know what, there's a path I want to take as an entrepreneur. Because you have positions in your home, you can leverage that now and create a business because now that home, which is your bank, if you're using it correctly, please do not use your house as an ATM machine. That is not what your house is for. But you can use some of these things that with the equity to create different portfolios within your family. And that's how you create wealth, is through an asset, in my opinion.
I think you're spot on. And going back to that, isolating the overhead thing, I feel like a lot of first-time home buyers or just renters, people that haven't purchased a home yet. And my wife and I bought our first home when I was only 25, and I wish I did it at 19, 21, or found a way earlier because that would just be so many more steps ahead. And people don't understand. It's look, these are 30-year fixed mortgages. If anything goes sideways, you have that payment to take care of. The only thing that's going to inflate are your property taxes and then your homeowner's insurance. That's the only change. Every payment will be the same versus if you rent, that payment's going to go up every single year. Additionally, appreciation costs continue to go up. And everyone's like, oh, I just need to save up my 20%. Down, or I'm only comfortable on this payment. Well, look at this. It's super, super hard to outsave appreciation.
Absolutely.
Think about what a family has to do to save 10 G's cash post-tax. 10 G's. That's a ton of money. We're talking, you need to make an additional 16 to 20%, or 16 to 20K in the year and not touch it. Pre-tax, let it filter down, put it in the bank.
Yeah.
That's really hard. But guess what? That $450,000 house you're looking at now costs $505 by the time you've saved up all that money.
Exactly. And short story, when my wife and I got married, parts of the community where I was from, buying a home wasn't something that we would thought to do, right? It was like, hey, you have a house. Okay, cool, man. That's what's up. You got the house, right? That's what's up.
Yeah.
And then we were conformed to it's okay to pay rent because we're just living. We're just trying to do what we can, right? My wife and I, we got married. Literally, we didn't even do a big wedding. I looked at her and I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna buy a house, man. And friends at the time were like, dude, you're crazy, man. Why are you spending all this money? I'm like, man, listen. I don't see any value me paying rent into something that I have a daughter already. How am I supposed to put her in a situation where she can grow? So it has to start with me as a dad first, right? So when I decided not to have a wedding, bought the house, everybody looked at me like it was crazy. And so the commitment I made to my wife was like, hey, you know what? We do 10 years.
Right.
We'll do a wedding then. Most likely those those will be our friends.
That's a
right.
That's a good point.
She looked at me and she was like, I can't believe you're doing this. I'm like, well, first thing is first. We have to understand we're examples. We're parents. We have a kid. We have to make sure we provide for our family. And my parents being immigrants, I already knew that I had to do this. So this is why it's so important for me when it comes to clients working with me and referral partners, because this is the beacon of my life, right? Showing you what you can do with those assets.
And that's super impactful. And I hope people watching and listening get inspired too, because it's not impossible. And I think that's where a lot of that energy, or you're saying before, like, oh, you're getting too emotional to it. It's like, no, because we are looking at it from the lens that you're in. Like, this is going to make generational differences. And then, not to get all sappy, but it's like, guys, so many people are just going off to college and getting themselves into $100,000 in debt for a degree that they're not committed to, not interested in.
Exactly.
And now they'll be stuck with this debt for their entire life and struggling to make those payments, or trying to find creative ways to have them deferred or get them relieved. And now your entire existence isn't about growing wealth.
No.
It's about avoiding paying bills.
Yeah, it's called liability that you're probably not going to pay anytime soon.
I mean, I love the wedding thing, because weddings are crazy expensive. You can spend an infinite amount of money on a wedding. And I'm not saying don't do a wedding, but there's a lot of creative ways to maybe cut that wedding bill by 50%, 75%, and put the rest of that money toward a home and start off financially sound with an asset, just like you said. And guess what the number one reason why people get divorced is?
Finances, right? It's the truth. Like,
have that dialed in.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's easy, but you got to put energy and thought and really think through what's your top priority.
Exactly. Right? Spot on.
It's like, for me, my entire goal for all of our properties, for my wife and I, is to have them paid off around the years that we plan to have career freedom, aka retirement. I don't think I'll ever retire, but career freedom. We're like, hey, maybe I want to go work for a nonprofit, or I want to go work for the Portland Public School District and do financial literacy. They're not going to be able to pay me any money. But if I had that career freedom and I had all my bills paid and had no mortgage debt, I could go do that for 5-10 years, right?
Absolutely.
So the commitment my wife and I make is we add additional money toward our principal every single month, so that we not only are paying the principal balance down quicker, but we're paying it 15 years off faster. So our 30 has now moved to a 15, and then we'll be mortgage free by the time we want to be career free.
Right. And we do the same thing.
That's a commitment, though.
It's a
priority.
Right. Because just because you get older,
right,
there are certain things you're not going to be able to do.
Absolutely.
Like what you did when you was 21, 22, 23.
Sure.
Also, when you're doing that, you're also allocating your 401k or your Roth IRA accounts, right? Absolutely. Because that is going to be your cash flow. If you can't understand that, you shouldn't be talking to a mortgage advisor. You should be talking to a financial advisor. If you want those short-term commitments, there are people who you can talk to for that. Yeah. When clients who are talking to us, you and I, this is what we're giving them. We're giving them the path to what passive income can be and how financial literacy can work. And that's what it's all about, ultimately.
Yeah. No, I love the way you said that. And I was like, my brain's getting going, because it just means so much. And like, going to the priority thing.
Right.
Of course, like, we could have really crazy cars if we wanted, right? Yeah. But I drive a Toyota, a respectable car, and I'm going to drive that thing till half a million miles if I can, right?
Good luck with that.
Or some people, they prioritize having a $900 to $1,100 a month car payment. But if you had a reasonable car payment, or paid off your reasonable car, conservative car, and took that extra money and put it toward that accelerated mortgage payment at 15 years, where you're paying it off in 15 years quicker because you're adding more to the principal, what I just explained, right? What's more important? You driving a souped up Range Rover and impressing people that don't even know you because they're on the side of the street, or Do you want to have career freedom?
It also, to go further,
and I'm not dogging nice cars.
No, not absolutely right.
I'm just trying to be like, come on.
And you know what? You can have an expensive car note. Your car note could be $800-900 a month. But if you're making $30,000 a year, that doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, like if you're making $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, $1,000 a month car note is what you worked for. That you can afford it. Go ahead. What blows my mind up is when I hear ads, no credit, good credit, but you got a Mercedes, I could hook you up. I'm like, you're creating a cycle again. You're putting people into a situation where it's okay to make $40,000 and your car note is $1,200 a month. And I'm like, really? I take offense to that because you're saying you want to build communities, but you're asking someone to take something that depreciates quicker than anything that I know of and then say, okay, you know what? I think I'm ready to buy a house. And then now when you and I are doing the calculations, I'm like, all right, credit card, $20, car note, $1,300. And dude, you only make this amount. Why would you do this? Well, I wanted to fix my credit. So the
Mercedes, then you overextended on the payment.
So the German vehicle helped you.
Not to mention the maintenance costs on.
Exactly. So they don't have the mindset like you and I, like the Toyotas, the cars that we can afford with what we make, and realize that that's a simple liability which we work hard for, but we can afford,
right,
and still put more towards our asset, which is our principal.
Well, and I only get after that a little more intensely because like I've gone down that route. Like I grew up in a new money, old money area, like I explained, but I was working at the country club. Right. So I was around all those things. So yeah, of course I had those impulsive things when I was younger.
Right.
Like, yeah, I want this. And oh my gosh, the BMW or the super expensive suits or whatnot.
Right.
Like, no, like what's more important to me is keeping my overhead low.
Correct.
Having flexibility to have experiences in life.
Right.
And not be, have what's that called? The golden handcuffs where you're just stuck. But you just given that like $1,300 Mercedes payment, right? We're talking like $200,000 in real estate buying power.
Right.
So say you were with no payment, you'd be $500,000. You go to Jimmy, you're like, yeah, I got the, souped up C-Class or whatever. I don't know Mercedes very well. But now Jimmy can only give you a $300,000 loan because you're riding that car.
Yeah.
Wow.
I try to, I try to compartmentalize these things, right? Because you can't go you can't go into these conversations because you emotionally, like, you try to figure out why did you do this, but at the same time they probably don't know. And so I have to be a professional. I have to take time out, schedule that call, and get my mind right so I understand that what happened is, if you didn't know, let me help you understand why this was not the way to go.
I'm with you too, and a lot of it, and this happened to me when I was a kid.
Right.
We remember little things that were taught from our parents that might or might not be true, right? Like when I was young, my dad, he was struggling with starting his own business and transitioning into a career and overused credit cards. All I remembered growing up, Jimmy, was credit cards are the devil.
Right.
Never take them out, son. And like, I wasn't old enough to understand the context of that comment, but it stuck.
Yeah.
So going in as an adult, you turn 18 and you're like, you get that first credit card or whatever, and it has a little like $1,000 limit. You stack it up and you can't pay it off. And you're like, well, credit cards are the devil. But that stuff gets passed down and there's no education. There's nothing in our public school system teaching anyone about how a FICO score's determined or how to properly use a credit card or the long-term impacts of student loans.
Yeah.
And this is stopping people from getting into home ownership, and it's impacting generational wealth over decades. It's not centuries.
Yeah, you have an anchor on your leg. Like, you're like, where am I going? You're not going anywhere because you have all this pounds on your leg. So the same thing with my oldest daughter. She's on my credit cards right now. And I'm letting her know, like, this is what the limit is. This is what you can do. You go past this, whatever you made during the summer, you're going to pay for it. Yep. I will take care of it because I don't want the interest. But best believe you're going to give me back my money, right? Because you need to understand that money does not grow on trees. we have worked hard to put you in a situation to afford certain things.
Yeah.
Therefore, you need to be responsible, because then now that mindset is taken care of moving forward. So when she has her kids, her family, she'll set that up right then and there.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely, man.
I love that you're doing that, and it's just going to make a world of impact in understanding the financial management. And I know we're like ping ponging all around here, but let's try to have like
good stuff. Yeah, let's make it fun now. Let's make it fun. Okay.
Yeah, like going into kind of a final segment though. Like,
okay,
what is off the top of your head like the big number one fun story for a home buyer with you? Like that, just like a family you got into a home, and did it take 1 or 2 years, or anything off the top of your head that's a good story to share?
I have 2 good stories. So last year, during the hype of the market, some who did not know about VA loans were like, we don't want this, we don't want that. So I had a client I was working with, and she asked me, what's the difference between the conventional and VA loan? I'm like, there is no difference.
Yeah.
And she said, I heard the appraisal. I'm like, is your house in good condition? Does your house have everything working? Those loans are good. They're just as good as conventional. Some can make a case VA loans are better than conventional loans. I'm not a VA expert, but I know the general conception of a VA loan, right?
I do a lot of VA. Yeah.
Right. So she said, okay, fine. We had this conversation. She gave that person who fought for our country that home over the conventional buyer. And that made me feel good because of the simple fact that, 1, you listened to me. 2, I did not steer you in any wrong direction.
Right.
I just wanted to give you the difference of what these loans were. 3, you sold that house and you brought the house to help you move, because you upgraded, right?
Right.
And then another story was I was working with this client who worked a year until she got her second job to calculate for her DTI, which she needed income to apply for the mortgage. And she was like, Jimmy, I'm going to call you. I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. A single mom, raising her kids, needed the second job to qualify, waited to that 2-year mark and got the mortgage. Man, I was doing jumping jacks. It was like, this is what it's all about. You have to love what you do, because ultimately the key is in your hands to help them get whatever they're looking for when it comes to home ownership. Totally, you know what I mean? This is what I took away from 2021 with my experiences.
I like that second job thing, because not a lot of people know that. They think, okay, so it kind of goes back, just a little educational piece for everyone.
Right.
When you are applying for a mortgage, there's a difference between what you think you make and what qualifying income is.
That is very correct.
There are 2 major differences in those determiners. So the qualifying income is what an underwriter, the person that stamps the approved,
right.
That's they have strict guidelines to what counts, right?
Correct.
So it needs to be almost guaranteed income. And that is based mostly on your primary job, right?
Right.
If it's sales and commission, they're going to take 2-year average of your commissions and making sure they're on level plane or increasing, can't be decreasing.
Right.
If you're a salary person, super easy.
Right.
Right. But here's the thing, with overtime and second jobs, there has to be a 2-year continuance.
Correct.
In order for all of that money to be qualifying. You can't just have one job and then decide you're going to pick up a shift at Best Buy on Saturdays and bump your income up another $1,000. That doesn't work. So what Jimmy's saying about, man, it was so cool to first talk with this client. Then they needed to continue to get that second job 2-year mark history to double count qualifying income and maximize the approval. Man, that's exciting stuff. And I love to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, what's cool about the situation was that she stuck with me. She was like, oh my God.
It's like a journey.
Yeah, it's like, and then you're sitting there, you're like, wow, this is what it's all about. And to go further, we had accountability calls. Yeah. Hold me accountable because I'm going to hold you accountable. And that's how it turned out. And it was just a blessing to see a mother do so much for her kids. It was priceless. Like I said, it was a good look. It was a good look. It was definitely a good look.
It's fantastic. I really am happy that you took the time to, share with us your stories and have a little banter about the East and the West Coast.
Yeah.
But I think the common ground is just doing what's different to make an impact on people's lives. And like, not that I feel like we're kind of starting to talk to mortgage professionals, but I think from a consumer standpoint, guys, everyone that's out there, think twice about how you're being treated when you're having a mortgage strategy call. Is someone trying to jam you through and have a short conversation? Okay, you're good. Talk to me when you're done.
Yeah.
No, or are they taking the time, like what Jimmy's saying, where it's like, it was an accountability partner.
Right.
But are they tied to the outcome being fast, or are they tied to the outcome being what's best for you? Because that's what's most important, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Just for the simple reason is because we help make decisions in their lives, and they're always going to remember that, right? It's always that time I got the house, and even sometimes you wake up at 2 a.m, you're like, you pinch yourself because where you're at in your life, and that's the same thing when someone's buying a home. We finally got the house. I'm like, and no one can talk to you because you're talking to yourself at 2 a.m, right? So that's what it's about, right? The essence of home ownership. And that's what you and I try to do. We empower that through all of our relationships.
It's so impactful. You just reminded me what you're talking there. The first detached home that my wife and I bought.
Right.
Our first one was a condo, then we converted to a rental, bought a primary. I remember sitting across the street from the house on the curb, and we had just gotten keys, but we weren't moving until the next day. Just got the keys and like literally started crying. Like just by myself. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like literally less than 10 years prior, like I was couch surfing, didn't have a great job, never owned a home, was struggling in life. So anyone out there that's wondering if it can happen, these timelines, if you make it a priority and you work toward that as a goal, there's plenty of resources out there, and I can tell you from personal experience, you can change your life through home ownership.
And that's the same thing I do with my referral partners. This is a staple of my life with them. If you have to do real estate, I don't want to work with you. If you love to do real estate, we're going to do well together. Mm-hmm. That's it. Because I don't want you to force certain things down someone's throat just because you're chasing that commission. That means crap to me. Yeah. Because ultimately, you are their key when you two are not around each other, right? They're talking about their experience. They want to know how it happened, and they're sharing those experiences with friends and family. So that's how I always make it. That's how I make it with my referral partners. You gotta love what you do in order to work with me. Other than that, I just don't want that relationship. Yeah. And like I said, there's other businesses out there that can do that, right? Good luck to you with that. I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole.
I love that. You can't be tied to the. You can't be tied to the outcome to truly be objective.
Love it.
That's
what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Well, I think on that note, we'll slide out to our outro, which we're by myself right now, just me and Jimmy. So I don't have someone to press the music button. So I'm going to have to tie that in on the end post editing. But Jimmy, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on the MLO show. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, but make sure in the outro, the outro.
What kind of music do you want?
Biggie Smalls, man.
I don't know.
It's the Brooklyn way, man. You know how we do.
I'll see if I can try to find something Brooklyn. It'll probably be playing right now. I do not have rights to use Biggie Smalls music in my podcast. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I don't need someone coming after me. That's
right,
so
be like,
funny.
hey, I want my money.
Well, how can someone get a hold of you? Just lastly, if they wanted to reach out and they're in your neck of the woods nationally,
yeah. So I'm at Guarantee Rate Affinity. I'm also on Instagram, Jimmy.mortgages. I'm on Facebook, Jimmy Joseph Mortgages. And like I said, you just type in Jimmy Joseph Mortgage, my name should come up. That's what
Absolutely.
I worked so hard to get to that. So yeah, it should work.
Well, if you're out in that Northeast, always hit us up and find Jimmy. He is a part of the crew of the trusted, liked mortgage originators in the nation from the MLO show. And of course, you've got that VIP hotline for me directly. And that goes out to my whole team. If you ever need questions or need me to connect you with Jimmy or anyone across America that I know, like, and trust with the same fundamental educational approach of transparency within the mortgage and real estate space, hit us up on that number. And until next time, everyone, we will catch you later.
Have a good one. Peace.
Fun.
How was that?
Great. Dude, lots of really good stories.
It's like that was. I got to make sure I don't hit that.
It's right. Yeah, I need him.
No. I was okay. I'm gonna turn off. I don't want nobody coming after me.